On February 6, 2023, the earth shook and millions of lives changed forever. A powerful earthquake, magnitude 7.8, struck southern Turkey and northern Syria, followed by another massive quake just hours later. The epicenter of the earthquake lay along the East Anatolian Fault, a vast and ancient scar that slices through the heart of southeastern Turkey. This fault, stretching for hundreds of kilometers, is not just a line on a map, it is a living, shifting boundary between two immense tectonic plates. For centuries it has shaped the land, the people, and the very history of the region. The ground here is restless, always in motion, as if the earth itself remembers the countless tremors and upheavals that have come before. The villages and cities that dot this landscape are built on a foundation that is anything but stable, their fate intertwined with the slow, relentless movements deep beneath their feet. Here at this very fault, the Arabian plate pushes inexorably north, colliding with the massive Eurasian plate. This is not a gentle meeting, but a violent, grinding confrontation that has been ongoing for millions of years. The Arabian plate, driven by certain forces deep within the earth, moves at a rate of about 2 centimeters per year, an almost imperceptible pace to us, but one that over time exerts unimaginable pressure on the rocks above. The Eurasian plate, equally vast and unyielding, resists this advance, and the result is a zone of intense geological stress. The land is squeezed, twisted, and fractured, creating a complex network of faults and fractures that crisscross the region. This collision is responsible for the dramatic mountains and valleys that define the landscape, but it also means that the ground is always under tension, always on the verge of release. Over decades and even centuries, the pressure along the East Anatolian Fault builds in silence. The rocks are squeezed tighter and tighter, storing energy like a coiled spring. People go about their lives above, unaware of the invisible forces gathering strength beneath them. Scientists monitor the fault, measuring tiny shifts and tremors, knowing that one day the accumulated stress will become too great for the earth to bear. When that moment comes, the fault slips, sometimes by just a few meters, but with devastating consequences. The energy that has been locked away for so long is released in an instant, sending shockwaves racing through the ground. Buildings tremble and collapse, roads buckle, and the landscape is forever changed. The earthquake is not just a natural event, it is the culmination of a process that has been unfolding for generations, a reminder of the power and unpredictability of the planet we call home. For those who live near the East Anatolian Fault, the threat of earthquakes is a constant presence, a shadow that lingers at the edge of daily life. Many have stories of past quakes, of nights spent huddled outside as the ground shook, of loved ones lost or homes destroyed. The memory of these disasters shapes the way people build, the way they prepare, and the way they hope. Emergency workers train tirelessly, ready to respond at a moment's notice. Scientists work to improve early warning systems, hoping to give communities precious seconds to seek shelter. And yet, despite all our knowledge and preparation, the earth remains unpredictable. Each earthquake is unique, its timing and intensity impossible to predict with certainty. All we can do is learn from the past, adapt, and remain vigilant. In the aftermath of each quake, communities come together to rebuild and recover. Children return to schools that have been reinforced to withstand future tremors. Families gather in new homes, constructed with the latest engineering techniques designed to keep them safe. Workshops and drills teach people how to respond when the ground begins to shake, turning fear into preparedness. Engineers and architects study the failures of the past, striving to create buildings that can endure the next big quake. Through resilience and innovation, life continues along the East Anatolian Fault, even as the earth beneath remains restless. The story of the East Anatolian Fault is one of both danger and endurance. a testament to the power of nature and the strength of the human spirit. Here, where continents collide and the ground is always in motion, people have learned to live with uncertainty, to adapt and to hope. The fog may be a source of destruction, but it is also a reminder of the dynamic, ever-changing planet we inhabit. As long as the plates continue to move, the story will go on, written in the rocks, the mountains, and the lives of those who call this place home. What made it worse was the timing. Early morning, when people were asleep, a time when the world is at its most vulnerable, wrapped in the quiet stillness that comes just before dawn. In those precious hours, the city is suspended between night and day, its residents lost in dreams, unaware of the disaster about to unfold. The streets are empty, the air is cool, and the only sounds are the distant calls of birds and the gentle hum of life beginning to stir. Most people are tucked safely in their beds, children curled up beside their parents, elderly couples resting after a long day, and workers catching a few more moments of rest before the demands of the day begin. It is a time of peace, of safety, of trust in the walls that surround us. But on this morning, that trust would be shattered in an instant. In cities across the region, thousands of buildings stood as silent sentinels, many of them constructed decades ago, long before modern safety codes were established. These were homes built with the best intentions, but often with limited resources, outdated materials, or without the benefit of strict oversight. Over the years, as populations grew and cities expanded, new buildings rose quickly to meet the demand for housing, sometimes at the expense of safety. In some neighborhoods, entire blocks were filled with old concrete structures, their foundation weakened by time, their walls riddled with hidden cracks. Many of these buildings were never designed to withstand the immense forces of a major earthquake. They were vulnerable, their flaws invisible until the moment disaster struck. For the families live inside, these buildings were more than just shelter. They were the backdrop to their lives, filled with memories, laughter, and love. But in the early hours of that morning, these same walls would become deadly traps. When the earthquake struck, it did so with a sudden, violent force that shattered the silence of the morning. In just a few seconds, the ground heaved and buckled, sending shockwaves through the city. Buildings that stood for generations began to tremble, their walls groaning under the strain. Some collapsed instantly, pancaking floor upon floor, trapping entire families beneath tons of concrete and steel. Others crumbled more slowly, giving their occupants only moments to react, to reach for a loved one, to call out in fear, to try and escape. The air filled with the sound of breaking glass, falling debris, and the terrified screams of those caught inside. Dust clouds billowed into the streets, obscuring the rising sun and turning day into night. In the chaos, neighbors rushed to help one another, digging through rubble with bare hands, calling out names, hoping for a response. Rescue workers arrived as quickly as they could, their faces grim as they searched for survivors, their efforts hampered by the sheer scale of the destruction. For many, it was already too late. The timing of the earthquake, striking when people were most defenseless in buildings ill-equipped to protect them, turned a natural disaster into a human tragedy of unimaginable scale. In those first moments, as the city awoke to devastation, the true cost of vulnerability became heartbreakingly clear. The early morning, once a symbol of hope and renewal, was now forever marked by loss. The aftermath of the earthquake was nothing short of catastrophic. In the days and weeks that followed, the true scale of the disaster became heartbreakingly clear. Over 50,000 people lost their lives in a matter of moments, their futures and dreams cut short by the violent shaking of the earth. The loss was not just a number, it was a collection of stories, families, and communities forever changed. In towns and cities across Turkey and Syria, the air was thick with grief. Mourners gathered at makeshift memorials, clutching photographs of loved ones, lighting candles and offering prayers. The pain was palpable, echoing through the streets and across the fields where mass graves had to be dug to accommodate the overwhelming number of victims. The sight of these graves, stretching out in long, somber rows, was a stark reminder of the human cost of the disaster. But the tragedy did not end with the loss of life. In the aftermath, millions of people found themselves suddenly displaced, their homes reduced to rubble or rendered unsafe by the relentless tremors. Entire neighborhoods were flattened, leaving families with nothing but the clothes on their backs and the memories of what once was. Makeshift tents sprang up in parks, open fields, and even along roadsides as survivors sought shelter from the cold winter nights. The sense of uncertainty was overwhelming. People wondered where they would sleep, how they would feed their children, and when, if ever, they might return to something resembling normalcy. The scale of displacement was unprecedented, with both Turkey and Syria struggling to provide even the most basic necessities to those affected. Food, clean water, and medical supplies were in short supply, and the threat of disease loomed large in the crowded camps. Humanitarian organizations and local volunteers rushed to the scene, working tirelessly to distribute food, water, and blankets to those in need. Aid trucks rumbled into the disaster zones, their cargoes of relief supplies offering a glimmer of hope amid the devastation. Children huddled around campfires trying to stay warm as the temperatures dropped, while parents did their best to comfort them and maintain a sense of routine. The resilience of the survivors was remarkable, but the challenges they faced were immense. Many had lost not only their homes, but also their livelihoods, as businesses and farms were destroyed in the quake. Schools were closed, hospitals were damaged or destroyed, and entire communities were left without access to basic services. The destruction of hospitals and medical facilities was particularly devastating. In the immediate aftermath, doctors and nurses worked around the clock in makeshift clinics, doing their best to treat the injured with limited resources. Ambulances struggled to navigate debris-strewn streets, and many patients had to be carried by hand or on improvised stretchers. The lack of clean water and sanitation made it difficult to prevent the spread of disease, and medical staff faced the heartbreaking task of prioritizing care for those most likely to survive. Despite these challenges, the dedication and courage saved countless lives. The earthquake also wreaked havoc on the region's infrastructure. Roads and bridges were destroyed, cutting off entire towns and villages from the outside world. Landslides blocked highways, and the sheer scale of the destruction made it nearly impossible for rescue teams to reach some of the hardest hit areas. Heavy machinery was brought in to clear the rubble, but progress was slow, and every hour that passed meant fewer chances of finding survivors. In some places, people were forced to dig through the debris with their bare hands, desperate to reach loved ones trapped beneath the ruins. Rescue teams from around the world arrived to help, bringing with them specialized equipment and trained dogs to search for survivors. The scenes were both harrowing and inspiring. Emergency workers digging tirelessly through collapsed buildings, listening for the faintest sounds of life, and risking their own safety to save others. Every successful rescue was met with cheers and tears, a small victory in the midst of overwhelming loss. But the work was grueling, and the emotional toll on rescuers and survivors alike was immense. As days turned into weeks, the focus shifted from rescue to recovery, and the long process of rebuilding began. The road ahead was daunting, but the spirit of solidarity and compassion that emerged in the aftermath of the earthquake offered hope that together the people of Turkey and Syria could begin to heal and rebuild their shattered communities. Yet amid the devastation, humanity rose. Rescue teams from dozens of countries and waves of aid and donations, flowed in to help those in need. This disaster left not only destruction, but a harsh reminder of the need for safe construction and, honestly, better preparedness against the power of nature. The 2023 Turkey-Syria earthquake, a painful memory and a testament that even when the ground shakes beneath us, hope still stands tall.